Be open to the teacher lesson. Um, I'm not going to read the whole passage again because we are going through it bit by bit here. So we'll start with what we talked about yesterday. We talked about blind sinners, and and what I said was that as long as a person thinks that he or she is all right, he or she is all wrong. And that happens. People think they're good enough for heaven. They're basically a good person, and that's all they have to be. But they don't understand the truth. Let me see. So, and I told you how Mel Goldwell said it's easier to convince a convict of his need for Jesus than it is the average middle class or upper middle class person, because they think they're fine. Their life is easy. They believe in God. Maybe they go to church, but they don't understand who Jesus is. So, so we then talked about the sheepfold, and we talked about what a sheepfold is and its place of shelter. And then we talked about there's only one door in or one door out, and Jesus is going to say that as well. And then there's the thief who wants to kill the sheep, and some of those thieves can be wild animals, but some of them are people who are poaching those sheep. And a thief obviously is one who breaks in into a house to steal, and they don't usually walk through the front door unless you've left it unlocked. And I told you the story of us breaking into our own house and how that went for us. And then we talked about uh, so we started with Buddhists. They seek nirvana or extinction of desire. So I told you that they believe that life consists of getting rid of desire. That because suffering comes from desire, and so if we don't desire anything, we won't suffer. And then the next group is the Hindus, also an Eastern. Wow. Also an Eastern religion, and it has some similarities to Buddhism. Hinduism is more religious than Buddhism. A lot of Buddhists are just cultural Buddhists. They're not religious Buddhists. But Hindus also seek nirvana, but for them it is a reunion with Brahman. And Brahman is the ultimate reality. He's an impersonal force. He's not a god. He's not. He has no relationship with people. And then Buddhists and Hindus both believe in reincarnation. That we go through many lives. And so you are born, and then you live, and you die, and then you reincarnate to something else. And the way that you get reincarnated or how you get reincarnated is based on your last life. So if you were a particularly good person or faithful, person in Buddhism or Hinduism, you would go up the scale. So say you were, I don't know, a worm, and then you became a dog. And then you were good again, and then you became a human. But then that human wasn't any good, so we went back down again. And so they believe in this cycle of births, deaths, reincarnation. And when they get to this is what both Buddhists and Hindus, when you get to the top, like when you get completely enlightened, you just poof into the universe. There isn't any sort of um, heaven as we know it. So and then there's a group. This isn't a religion. It's a category. So we have Buddhists and Hindus, but then there are these religions that are called New Age religions. So have you ever heard that term, New Age? So and you're going to see. I'm going to show you part of a video that will give you a kind of a taste of what I mean. So New Age religions are usually started by white people who like Eastern thoughts. And they believe in reincarnation, but they're not particularly spiritual. So one of the videos I'm going to show you is a woman named Terry Cole Whitaker. I'm going to tell you the story now. I usually tell it just before I show it, but I want to give you an idea of New Age religions. So for my graduation from high school, my parents gave me a trip to California because that's what I wanted. And so the first Sunday I was there, I was in Los Angeles the first week, and I stayed with my much older cousin. And all of my cousins were quite a bit older than me because my dad was the youngest and by far, and so I have all my cousins. But anyway, so I wanted to go to a church that I knew about. I'd read about a good Christian church, and so he took me there the first Sunday. And then the second Sunday, he drove me down to my aunt who lived in San Diego, right by me. And so he said, well, how about this Sunday? Last Sunday we went to church on the way, so that you wanted to go there. So why don't we go to a church that I like to go to when I'm in San Diego? So I said, sure. And it didn't take me long to realize that I was in a place that I didn't want to be. It started out with a hymn. Holy, holy, holy. What could be wrong with that, right? The last stanza of Holy, Holy, Holy is God in three persons, blessed Trinity. What was sung at that church was God in all persons, blessed unity. And that was about the time I said in my head, not aloud, don't come now, Lord Jesus. I don't want you to find me in this place. So that's New Age, and you'll get a more understanding of it as we go through. And then we talked about the I need to talk about Islam. So they call it Muslims. Muslims are the people that practice Islam. It's not the religion. Islam is the religion. Muslim are the people. Muslims are. I don't know how they didn't get that right, but I wasn't able to fix it. So Muslims are those who obviously practice the teachings of Islam, and they seek a paradise of pleasure when they die. And they believe they can achieve that goal by abstaining from pleasures here on earth, and then they will be rewarded with paradise. And the way you do that, it's called the 5 pillars of Islam. There are 5 things that every good Muslim, any Muslim that wants to get um, to this place that's a paradise with pleasure and lots of women for the men and all that. So the first thing you have to do is to recite the creed. And if you recite that creed in faith, like you believe what you're saying, and I'm about to say it, so I want you to know I don't believe it. So this is the creed. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. If you say that believing, that's all you have to do to be a Muslim. And then you have to you have to um, make at least one pilgrimage to Mecca in your lifetime. Mecca is in Saudi Arabia, and there's a number of things that you have to do while you're there. I talked all about that in world religions, but that's not our purpose here. So, and then the third one is to give money, tithing, basically, to the poor. I think the amount is like 2% or 4% or something like that. It's not a very lot, but you're supposed to do that. We would call that tithing. Um, and then pray 5 times a day. And there's certain times during the day where you stop everything you're doing. You kneel on your prayer rug. You point yourself to Mecca. Now, if you are in Mecca, you point yourself to the mosque, the main mosque in Mecca. And you pray and you bow and you're on your knees. And then the last thing is to keep the fast of the month of Ramadan. Now, fasting for a month sounds crazy, right? So what they do is they fast during the day, but then in the evening when the sun goes down, they have this big party and they pig out, and then they fast the next day as well. I don't remember how. I think it's 5 days, right? So that so it's not really fasting all those days. Okay, okay, we're good. So let's talk about the true sheep. Uh, I'm going to read this first. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. Understanding. Yeah. So the sheep know the voice of the shepherd. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And that is true of sheep. And the sheep and the shepherd are very much have a relationship, almost like we have with our pets. So true sheep know the shepherd's voice, and they won't listen to anyone else that isn't the shepherd. And the Pharisees didn't recognize Jesus as the shepherd, so they weren't the true sheep. So I'm going to play a little video about a modern day shepherd. So the sheep hear his voice and they follow him. They will not follow a stranger. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. Um, so the true sheep hear the voice of their shepherd and they follow. And there are many who are false shepherds. Now I'm not talking about real sheep. I'm talking about us as God's flock. And there are many who would try to knowingly or unknowingly um, uh, chase people away or lure people away from the truth of God. Um, and we shouldn't follow those people, those strangers. So I told you already about Terry Cole Whitaker, and I'm going to play a video of her. I want you to try and track with what she's saying, but what I really want you to see is how what she's saying amounts to nothing and isn't biblical at all. So think about that. Like, what does she say that is not accurate?